She said, "My whole family will be staying at your place this summer." I smiled and said, "The more, the merrier." Then I quietly called the HOA, knowing they had a strict rule against long-term guests. When they all got hit with a $5,000 fine eviction notice, my girlfriend announced her entire family was moving into my house for 3 months, like she was telling me what we were having for dinner. Just casual. Matter of fact, her parents, her 2 brothers, her sister, and her grandmother, 7 people total. I was in the garage working on my motorcycle when she dropped the news. Didn't even look up from her phone. Said her parents were selling their house and needed a place to stay while they looked for a new one. Thought my place was perfect since I had the space. I asked when this decision was made. She said her mom called that morning and it was already settled that we'd been dating for 18 months. Megan had moved in about 6 months ago. Things were fine. She paid her share of utilities, cooked sometimes, didn't cause problems. Her family, though, was another story. I met them plenty of times. Her mom, Patricia, treated every visit like an inspection, always finding something wrong with my house or my choices. Her dad, Ron, barely talked, just grunted and watched sports. Her brothers, Kyle and Brandon, were in their 20s but acted like teenagers. Her sister, Emma, was 19 and glued to her phone. The grandmother, Dorothy, was the only decent one, though she had opinions about everything that I asked Megan how long 3 months really meant. She got defensive, said exactly 3 months, that her parents already had a realtor, and that I was being unwelcoming. I told her 7 extra people was a lot. She said, "Families help each other, and you should be happy to help mine." Here's the thing. My house is in an HOA community, an expensive one, the kind where they measure your grass and send violation notices if it's too long. I bought here because it was a good investment and quiet. The HOA rules came in a thick binder when I closed on the house 2 years ago. I'd skimmed through them back then, but one rule stood out now. No guest staying longer than 14 consecutive days without written HOA approval. They enforced it strictly. A neighbor once told me someone got fined because their family overstayed during the holidays. That I looked at Megan and said, "The more the merrier." She seemed surprised I agreed so easily. Asked if I was sure. I said absolutely. Family's important. When do they arrive? She said this weekend, in 3 days. That night, after she went to bed, I pulled out the HOA binder and read the section again. Clear as day. Guests staying longer than 14 consecutive days needed written approval, submitted 30 days in advance. Violations started at $5,000 in fines and could escalate to property liens. Made sense when I thought about it. HOAs didn't want illegal rentals or long-term squatters. 14 days was generous. Anything longer meant they were living there. I didn't say a word to Megan. Friday afternoon, a full-size moving truck pulled up like they were relocating for good. Patricia came in first, immediately criticizing the living room layout. Ron carried boxes without greeting me. Kyle and Brandon rushed to claim the guest room and argued over bed placement. Emma sat on the couch and turned on the TV. Dorothy politely asked where she should put her things. Megan directed everyone like she was running a moving company, acting like this was all perfectly normal. That I stayed quiet and helpful. Carried boxes, moved furniture, smiled when Patricia criticized my dish soap brand. WY Saturday afternoon, they were fully settled in. Kyle and Brandon had their gaming setups on my TV. Emma's makeup covered the bathroom counter. Patricia had reorganized my entire kitchen. Ron had claimed the main couch for sports. Dorothy was knitting on the back patio. Megan looked happy. Everyone else looked comfortable. Saturday night, we had a big family dinner. Patricia cooked, dropping comments about my basic spices. Everyone gathered around my table like they'd lived there for years. They talked about house hunting. Patricia said they were being selective, that 3 months might not be enough. I asked what she meant. She said 3 months was just an initial plan. They wouldn't rush into the wrong house. And since we had plenty of space, time wasn't a problem. Ron agreed. Kyle joked it was nice not paying rent. Megan looked uneasy, but said nothing. Sunday morning, I went to my office and emailed the HOA management company. Told them I had a situation with my girlfriend's family staying at my place for months. Wanted to know the proper procedure for long-term guests. kept it vague. Monday morning, they replied, any guest staying longer than 14 consecutive days required board approval, submitted 30 days in advance. I replied that I wanted to handle things properly and would appreciate an inspection to clarify the situation. They confirmed someone would come by Tuesday afternoon. The HOA inspector showed up and knocked on the door. Patricia answered and let him in like she owned the place. He asked to speak with the property owner. I came out from my office, and he introduced himself, explaining he was there to inspect the guest situation per my inquiry. I confirmed that I currently had 7 guests who'd moved in recently and were planning to stay for around 3 months. He asked if I'd submitted the approval paperwork. I told him no, that I'd only found out about the long stay a few days before they arrived and had contacted the HOA as soon as I realized it might be an issue. He nodded, took notes, counted the people, asked a few questions about living arrangements, and said the board would review the information and get back to me. Patricia asked what the visit was about. I told her it was just some HOA paperwork regarding guests. She seemed fine with that and went back to what she was doing. Thursday evening, I got an email from the HOA board. They'd reviewed the inspector's report and my message. The verdict: I was in violation of the extended stay policy. As the homeowner, I was being fined $5,000. I had 30 days from the date of the official notice to remove the guests. If they remained past that deadline, the fine would increase by $5,000 per person per month, and the HOA could start lien proceedings against the property. The email included a PDF of the official letter. I didn't tell anyone right away. Friday, the certified letter arrived. I signed for it, opened it in my office, and read it through. Same details. The fines, the 30-day deadline, the legal implications. It was all official. I walked into the living room where everyone was gathered and said we had a problem. I handed Patricia the letter. She read it out loud, her voice getting louder with every line. She said it was ridiculous and that I should have handled it before they moved in. I reminded her I didn't know they were moving in until 3 days before they arrived. She said I should have anticipated they'd need help. Ron agreed, saying I should have thought ahead. Megan looked panicked and asked why I hadn't mentioned the HOA rules. I said I told her I was happy to have guests and that the rules were available to everyone. She said I should have been clearer about restrictions. I said most people ask before moving 7 family members into someone's house. Kyle and Brandon wandered in to see what was going on. Patricia explained the fines and the 30-day deadline. Kyle said HOAs were ridiculous. Brandon said they could challenge it. I told them HOAs were legally binding and had lawyers ready for that kind of thing, that fighting it would cost more than fixing it. Ron said they'd go to the next board meeting and explain their side, that any reasonable people would understand they just needed temporary housing. I told him he could try, but the policy was very clear. Patricia said there should be exceptions for reasonable circumstances. I asked if voluntarily selling a house and taking their time to find a new one counted as an emergency. She didn't like that. Dorothy, who'd been quiet until then, asked how long they'd been staying. I said 9 days. She asked about the 30-day timeline. I confirmed it started from the date of the notice. She looked at Patricia and said they needed to start finding short-term options right away. Patricia said they weren't leaving because of some overreaching HOA policy. The next morning, Megan pulled me aside and said we needed to handle this together as a couple, that her family was stressed about finding housing quickly. I told her they had options: month-to-month rentals, extended stay hotels, corporate housing. She said all of that was expensive and not in their budget. I said I understood, but that wasn't something I could fix. She asked if I'd known about the HOA rule before letting them move in. I said yes. I'd lived here for 2 years, so I was aware of the rules. She asked why I didn't mention them. I said she didn't ask before announcing her family was moving in. She said I should have told her anyway. I said she should have asked first. We went in circles like that for a while. Her saying I should have warned her, me saying she should have asked permission. Eventually, Megan asked if I'd pay for her family's temporary housing since the issue was happening at my property. I said no, I couldn't afford that. She got upset and walked out. Later, Patricia called the HOA herself. I could hear her arguing on the phone, saying things like this is unreasonable and there must be exceptions. She hung up furious, saying the HOA was being completely inflexible. Ron suggested getting a lawyer. I told him HOA contracts were usually airtight, but he said they'd still look into it. That weekend was tense. Everyone moved around the house in silence or muttered complaints. Kyle and Brandon ranted about HOA tyranny. Emma whined constantly, and Patricia was suddenly on the phone with realtors all day. Megan moved into the guest room. Dorothy was the only calm one. She told me privately that Patricia should have asked me first and that she'd encourage them to find a rental fast, that be why Monday. Patricia announced they'd found a short-term, month-to-month rental nearby. More expensive than they wanted, but available immediately. They'd move out by the end of the week, and Megan was going with them. I said that was good. Patricia glared and said I'd shown my true colors, that Megan deserved better. I didn't respond. By Wednesday morning, they were gone. The house was a mess, furniture rearranged, things left behind, kitchen reorganized. I spent the day putting everything back. Megan came by Thursday night for the last of her stuff. She said I'd humiliated her family and caused them financial stress. I pointed out they'd planned to live rent-free for months. She said that wasn't the point. We argued again, same circle. She said I should have warned her. I said she should have asked. Finally, she said she couldn't be with someone who'd do this. I agreed. She left and slammed the door. Her family sent angry messages. I blocked them all. 10 days later, the HOA confirmed the guests had vacated within the deadline. I still had to pay the $5,000 fine, but the escalation was waived. I paid it online. Expensive, but worth it. A few weeks later, my neighbor told me the board had mentioned me as an example of a homeowner who followed rules properly. I said it was easier to cooperate than argue. Months later, I saw Megan at a store with someone new. She called me nobody important. Her parents eventually bought a smaller house. The family split up into different places, and they blamed me for everything. But my house is quiet now, organized, and peaceful. People say I was cold for using the HOA to get them out. Maybe, but they didn't ask. They just decided. The HOA didn't make me the bad guy. They just made things official. I'd rather be the bad guy in peace than the good guy living in chaos.